The great chamber of the Galactic Council was older than most stars. Its walls stretched upward into darkness, carved from stone that had witnessed 60,000 years of history. 412 species had sat in these seats. 412 flags hung from the ceiling. And today, for the first time, a new species would join them. Dr. Una Park stood at the center of the chamber. She was small compared to the massive beings that surrounded her. Some of them had 6 legs. Some of them floated in tanks of liquid. Some of them were made of light itself. And all of them were looking at her with something between curiosity and amusement. She took a deep breath and began to speak. On behalf of the United Earth government, I thank the Galactic Council for this opportunity. Humanity comes to you not as conquerors, but as friends. We wish only to learn, to trade, and to find our place among the stars. High Speaker Vel leaned forward in his ancient throne. He was an Orion, one of the oldest species in the galaxy. His skin was pale blue, and his eyes held the weight of 10,000 years. When he spoke, his voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. Humanity, you were young. Your species discovered fire only moments ago by our measure of time. You have not yet learned to live in peace with yourselves. Why should we trust you to live in peace with us? Una did not flinch. She had prepared for this question. You are right, High Speaker. We are young. We have made many mistakes, but we have also learned from them. We no longer wage war against each other. We have united under one government. We have healed our planet, and we have come here across the stars to prove that we are ready. A sound rippled through the chamber. It took Una a moment to realize it was laughter. The various species were laughing at her, each in their own way. Counselor Thorn, a tall creature with gray skin and sharp teeth, spoke next. He represented the Vex Dominion, one of the most powerful members of the council. How touching, he said. The little humans have stopped hitting each other with sticks. Perhaps in another 1,000,000 years, they will be ready to join civilized society. More laughter followed. Una felt her face grow hot, but she kept her expression calm. She had dealt with worse insults on Earth. She could handle this. High Speaker Vel raised one hand, and the chamber fell silent. We will grant humanity provisional membership, he announced. You will be assigned a small sector of space on the outer edge of Council territory. You will have limited trading rights, and you will be watched. If you prove yourselves worthy, full membership may follow. In time, Una bowed her head. Thank you, High Speaker. Humanity is grateful. As she walked out of the chamber, she passed Counselor Thorn. He looked down at her with cold eyes. Enjoy your little corner of space, human, he said quietly. Try not to break anything. Una said nothing. She simply walked away. 3 months later, Admiral Tae Woojin stood on the bridge of the battleship Unity. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent 40 years in the military, fighting in conflicts that the galaxy would never know about. Now he commanded Earth's first fleet, 12 ships that represented the best humanity had to offer. Admiral, said his communications officer. Message from Earth Command. Put it through. The face of General Sora Kim appeared on the screen. She was younger than Woojin, but just as experienced. Her expression was serious. Tae, we have a situation. Our colony on New Busan has gone silent. Woojin frowned. New Busan was a small world on the edge of human territory. It was home to 2.3 million people, mostly farmers and miners. What do you mean silent? I mean all communications have stopped. No distress signal. No explanation. Just silence. Could be a technical problem. Could be. But our satellites detected something strange before we lost contact. Ships. Lots of them. And they weren't human. Woojin felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. Whose ships? We don't know yet. But whoever they are, they came from Council space. The Admiral turned to his navigation officer. Set a course for New Busan. Maximum speed. Sir, that will take us through Vex territory. No. Do it anyway. As the Unity jumped to faster-than-light speed, Woojin stood alone by the window. He watched the stars blur into lines of light. He thought about the Council, about their laughter, about their arrogance. He thought about Counselor Thorne and his cold eyes, and he thought about 2.3 million people who had suddenly stopped talking on Earth. Dr. Una Park was having dinner with her family when her phone rang. She looked at the screen and saw an unknown number. She answered it anyway. Dr. Park, this is Captain Minho Kong. I'm calling from New Busan. The connection was terrible. Static filled the line, but she could hear fear in the man's voice. Captain, we've been trying to reach the colony for hours. What's happening? They came without warning, Minho said. His voice was shaking.
Gray ships.
Hundreds of them. They started bombing the cities. There was no declaration, no demands. They just started killing everyone. Una's blood turned to ice. Who is attacking you? The Vex. It's the Vex Dominion. Dr. Park, they're slaughtering us. Men, women, children, they're not taking prisoners. They're just killing everyone they find. Line went dead. Una sat in silence for a long moment. Her younger brother Junho was stationed on New Busan. He worked at a research facility there. He had sent her a message just yesterday, complaining about the food. She stood up from the table. Her hands were shaking. Una, her mother asked. What's wrong? She didn't answer. She was already walking to the door. Across the galaxy, the Galactic Council continued their business as usual. They discussed trade agreements and border disputes. They planned festivals and cultural exchanges. They had no idea that everything was about to change. Hi, Speaker. Vel was reviewing a report about mineral rights when his assistant interrupted him, sir. There's been an incident in the human sector. Ow! Vel didn't look up. What kind of incident? The Vex Dominion has conducted a territorial correction. Vel waved one hand dismissively. These things happen. The humans will file a complaint. We'll schedule a hearing. The usual process. Yes, High Speaker. I'm sure the humans will understand. They wouldn't understand. And soon, the entire galaxy would learn what happened when humanity stopped asking for permission and started demanding justice. The age of peace was ending, and the age of humanity was about to begin. Captain Minho Kong ran through the burning streets of New Busan City. The sky above him was filled with smoke and fire. Gray ships hung in the air like metal ghosts, dropping bombs on everything below. The screams of the dying filled his ears. He had been a soldier for 15 years. He had trained for war his entire adult life, but nothing had prepared him for this. A building collapsed to his left. He ducked behind a broken wall and watched as Vex soldiers marched through the rubble. They were tall and gray, with black armor and weapons that glowed with purple light. They moved without emotion, shooting anyone they found. A woman ran past them, carrying a child in her arms. A Vex soldier raised his weapon and fired. The woman fell. The child fell with her. Minna felt something break inside him. Not fear. Something else. Something cold and sharp. He looked down at the camera attached to his chest armor. It was recording everything. Every death. Every scream. Every act of cruelty. The galaxy needed to see this. The galaxy needed to know. Captain. Sergeant Hannah Lee appeared beside him. Her face was covered in dust and blood. Her eyes were wild. We need to move. There's a shuttle at the spaceport. It might still work. How many survivors? 47. That's all I could find, out of 2.3 million people. 40-7.Minho nodded slowly. Get them to the shuttle. I'll cover you, Captain. You can't stay here alone. That's an order, Sergeant. Anna looked at him for a long moment. Then she turned and ran toward the survivors. Minho stood up and raised his rifle. He thought about his wife back on Earth. He thought about his daughter, who had just learned to walk. He thought about all the people who were dying around him, people who had done nothing wrong, people who had only wanted to build a new life among the stars. And he thought about the Council, about their laughter, about their rules and their processes and their 200-year arbitrations. Come on, he whispered to the approaching soldiers. Come and get me. 12 hours later, a small shuttle limped into Earth space. It carried 47 survivors and one captain who had taken 17 bullets and refused to die. It also carried a video recording that would change the course of history. The emergency session of the Galactic Council began 3 days later. Representatives from all 412 species gathered in the Great Chamber. High Speaker Vel sat on his ancient throne, looking bored. Dr. Una Park walked to the center of the chamber. She looked different than before. Her eyes were red from crying. Her hands were steady with cold anger. She had not slept in 3 days. The council recognizes the representative from Earth, Vel said. You may present your complaint. Complaint. Una repeated the word like it was poison. You call this a complaint? She pressed a button on her datapad. A holographic screen appeared in the center of the chamber. The video began to play. The council watched as vexed ships descended on New Busan. They watched as bombs fell on hospitals and schools. They watched as soldiers executed families in the streets. They watched as children ran screaming from their burning homes. Some of the Count ill members looked away. Others watched with expressions of mild interest, as if they were viewing a nature documentary. When the video ended, silence filled the chamber. Una spoke again. 2.3 million people. Men, women, children, farmers, teachers, scientists, my brother, all dead. Killed without warning. Killed without reason. Killed because the Vex Dominion decided that our colony was in their way. Counselor Thorne rose from his seat. His voice was calm, almost pleasant. The Vex Dominion exercised its right to territorial correction. The human colony was established in a disputed zone. According to Council Law, Section 847, Subsection 12, any species may reclaim disputed territory through appropriate measures. Appropriate measures? Una's voice cracked. You murdered children. You bombed hospitals. You slaughtered innocent people who had never raised a weapon against you. They were in our space. They were warned. They were never warned. There was no warning. Thorne shrugged. An administrative error. Regrettable, but not illegal. High Speaker Vel raised his hand for silence. Dr. Park, the council understands your pain. The loss of life is always unfortunate. We will open a formal investigation into this matter. When? The investigation will begin within the standard time frame. Approximately 50 years. Una stared at him. 50 years. These things take time. Evidence must be gathered. Witnesses must be interviewed. Both sides must be heard. And then what? Then the council will deliberate. That process typically takes another 150 years. If the Vex Dominion is found guilty of improper conduct, they will be required to pay reparations. Perhaps a formal apology. 200 years. For the murder of 2.3 million people, and the punishment is an apology. Al nodded. The council must be fair to all parties. This is how we have maintained peace for 60,000 years. Una closed her eyes. For a long moment, she said nothing. The chamber was completely silent. Then she opened her eyes and spoke in a voice that was quiet but clear. I need to speak with my government. Of course. Take all the time you need. We will schedule the next hearing for... No, you don't understand. I need to speak with my government right now. Because what happens next is not my decision to make. She turned and walked out of the chamber. The council members watched her go with confusion. This was not how things were supposed to work. Species complained. Species waited. Species accepted. That was the way of the galaxy. But humanity had a different way. On Earth, Admiral Taewujin stood before the War Council. Every military leader on the planet was present. The president sat at the head of the table, his face pale but determined. The council has refused to act, Wujin said. 200 years of waiting, and then nothing. No justice. No protection, nothing. President Doan Choi looked around the room. And what do you recommend, Admiral? Wujin's voice was iron. We don't ask anymore. We don't wait anymore. We don't beg for justice from aliens who laugh at our dead. What are you saying? The Admiral looked at the president with eyes that had seen too much death. I'm saying we go to war. The room erupted in voices. Some shouted agreement. Others shouted warnings. But President Choi sat in silence, thinking about 2.3 million people who would never come home. Finally, he stood. "Prepare the fleet," he said, "and prepare a message for the Galactic Council. They wanted to see what humanity is capable of. We're about to show them." The age of asking was over. The age of taking had begun. The message arrived at the Galactic Council at exactly midnight, Earth time. It was broadcast on every frequency, in every language, to every corner of the galaxy. There was no introduction, no diplomacy. Just 7 words spoken by President Do-on Choi. United Earth's government declares war on the Vex Dominion. High Speaker Vel was asleep when his assistant woke him. The old Orion sat up in his bed, confused and irritated. "What is it? What could possibly be so important?" "Sir, the humans have made an announcement. At this hour." "What do they want now?" "They have declared war, sir." Vel blinked. For a moment he thought he had misheard. "I'm sorry. What did you say?" "War, sir?" "The humans have declared war on the Vex Dominion." "That's impossible. No one declares war. We haven't had a war in 12,000 years. Nevertheless, sir, that is what they have done." Vel stood slowly. His ancient bones ached. His mind struggled to understand what he was hearing. War was a concept from history books. It was something primitive species did before they joined the council. It was not something that happened in civilized society. "Call an emergency session," he said quietly. "Get everyone now." 3 hours later, the great chamber was filled with chaos. Council members shouted at each other in dozens of languages. Some demanded that humanity be expelled immediately. Others argued that this was simply a misunderstanding. A few suggested that the humans didn't really understand what the word war meant. Ambassador Rin pushed through the crowd toward High Speaker Vel's throne. Rin was a small being, covered in soft brown fur, with large eyes that had seen much in their 200 years. Unlike most council members, Rin had actually studied human history. And unlike most council members, Rin was terrified. "High Speaker, you must listen to me. This is serious." Vel looked down at the small ambassador with annoyance. "Of course it's serious. These humans are making threats they cannot possibly keep. We will have to discipline them." "No, sir, you don't understand. The humans are not making threats. They are making promises. They have 12 ships. The Vex have 3,000. What can they possibly do?" Rin shook his head. "You don't know them. None of you know them. I have studied their history. I have read their books. I have watched their recordings. And I am telling you, we have made a terrible mistake." "Explain." Rin took a deep breath. "The humans have never stopped fighting. Do you understand? Their entire history is war. They have fought each other for resources, for territory, for ideas, for pride. They have developed weapons that can destroy entire cities in a single moment. They have killed hundreds of millions of their own kind in conflicts that lasted years. They are not like us. They are not peaceful by nature. They have chosen peace, and they have fought for it, and they have paid for it in blood." Vel waved his hand dismissively. "All species have violent histories. That is why they joined the council, to move beyond such primitive behavior. But don't you see? We never moved beyond it. We simply forgot how to fight. Our weapons are ceremonial. Our soldiers are decorative. We have not faced a real threat in 60,000 years. But the humans? They remember everything. They train for war, even in peacetime. They prepare for the worst, even when things are good. And now we have given them a reason to use everything they have learned. You are being dramatic, am I?" Rin pulled out a datapad and showed it to the High Speaker. "Look at this. This is their military history. World War I, World War II, the nuclear standoff, the resource wars, each conflict bigger than the last. Each conflict producing new weapons, new tactics, new ways to kill. And through it all, they survived. They adapted. They won." Vel studied the datapad with growing unease. The numbers were staggering. Millions dead in single battles. Cities reduced to ash. Entire nations destroyed and rebuilt. It was madness. It was chaos. It was terrifying. This is barbaric. he whispered.
Us.
But it is also effective. The humans have been practicing war for 10,000 years. We have been practicing peace. What do you think will happen when they meet our forces in battle? Before Vel could answer, the chamber doors burst open. A messenger ran in, his face pale with shock. "Hi, Speaker. News from the Vex Dominion. The human fleet has crossed into their territory. 12 ships against 3,000, Vel said, though his voice lacked confidence. The Vex will crush them. Sir, it's not 12 ships anymore. What do you mean? The humans have been building in secret. For decades, they have 400 warships, and they're all heading for Vex Prime. Silence fell over the chamber. 400 ships. No one had suspected. No one had even imagined. On Earth, General Sora Kim stood before a massive display screen. It showed the position of every human vessel, every fighter squadron, every soldier and marine. She had spent 30 years planning for this moment. She had studied every war in human history. She had learned from every mistake, and now it was time to teach the galaxy what humanity could do. "All units report ready," her aide said. Good Sora looked at the screen with cold determination. "Send the signal. Operation Reckoning begins now." Across the stars, 400 ships jumped to faster-than-light speed. They carried weapons that had been refined by centuries of conflict. They carried soldiers who had trained since childhood. They carried the anger of a species that had been pushed too far in the great chamber of the Galactic Council. High Speaker Vel sank into his throne. For the first time in his 10,000 years of life, he felt something he had almost forgotten. Fear. "What have we done?" he whispered. "What have we awakened?" Ambassador Rin stood beside him, watching the chaos unfold. "You wanted to know what humanity was capable of. You're about to find out." The stars themselves seemed to tremble. The age of peace was over. And the wolves were coming. The Vex High Commander Drox stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. He was a massive creature, nearly 3 meters tall, covered in gray scales that had never known a Skratka. His fleet surrounded him like a metal ocean. 3,000 warships, each one built to inspire fear and demand respect. "The humans are approaching," his aide reported. 400 vessels, Drox laughed. It was a deep, rumbling sound that echoed through the bridge. 400 against 3,000. These creatures truly are as stupid as we thought. Form a standard defensive line. We will destroy them in minutes. Yes, High Commander. The Vex fleet arranged itself in the traditional formation. It was beautiful and elegant, designed to impress visiting dignitaries and intimidate lesser species. Every ship held its position perfectly. Every weapon was polished and gleaming. They had no idea what was coming. Admiral Tae Woo-jin sat in the command chair of the Unity. His eyes were fixed on the tactical display. Around him, officers worked in focused silence. There was no panic, no confusion, just the quiet efficiency of people who had trained their entire lives for this moment. "Enemy fleet in range in 3 minutes, his tactical officer reported. "Status of all squadrons? Ready and waiting, sir?" Woo-jin nodded. "Transmit the following message to the Vex flagship. Open channel. I want everyone to hear." He stood and faced the main screen. When he spoke, his voice was calm and cold. "High Commander Drux, I am Admiral Tae Woo-jin of the United Earth Fleet. You murdered 2.3 million of our people. Today you will answer for that crime. Surrender now, and your crews will be treated fairly. Refuse, and we will destroy you. You have 60 seconds to decide." On the Eternal Dominion, Drox burst into laughter again. "This human threatens me? With 400 ships against my 3,000? Send a response. Tell them their 60 seconds are up." The Vex weapons officer hesitated. "Sir, should we at least scan their vessels? We know very little about human technology." "I know all I need to know. They are weak. They are small. They are nothing. Fire all weapons." 3,000 Vex ships opened fire at once. The space between the fleets filled with purple light. It was overwhelming. It was terrifying. It should have been the end of humanity's brief war. But the human ships were not where they were supposed to be. In the 60 seconds since Wujin's message, the Earth fleet had scattered. They had broken formation and spread across space in a pattern that made no sense to Vex computers. The wall of fire hit nothing but empty space. What? Drox stared at his display. How did they move so fast? Unknown, sir. They're using some kind of rapid maneuvering system. Our targeting computers can't track them and then fire manually. Find them and destroy them. But it was already too late. Lieutenant Jiho led his fighter squadron through the chaos. He was 26 years old, the son of a mechanic and a teacher. He had been flying since he was 16, and right now, he was doing something no one in the galaxy had done in 12,000 years. He was fighting a real war. Squadron, this is lead. Target the flagship's engines. We're going to make them blind. Copy that, lead, but there's a lot of ships between us and them. Jiho smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Then we go through them. His fighter screamed forward. Behind him, 50 pilots followed. They wove between Vex ships, dodging fire that was never meant to hit moving targets. The Vex weapons were designed to destroy stationary enemies in ceremonial duels. They were useless against pilots who refused to hold still. Jiho's squadron reached the flagship in 90 seconds. They fired everything they had at the engine section. Explosions rippled across the Eternal Dominion's hull. The massive ship shuddered and began to drift. Direct hit. Jiho shouted. Their main engines are down. On the flagship bridge, Drox watched in disbelief as alarms screamed around him. How is this possible? They're insects. They're nothing. Sir, we're receiving reports from across the fleet. We've lost 200 ships. 200? In how long? For minutes, sir? Drox felt something he had never felt before. Fear real. Genuine fear. On the surface of Vex Prime, the ground war had begun. Human dropships fell from the sky like metal rain. Soldiers poured out, moving with speed and precision that the Vex defenders couldn't match. Corporal Yoonji Yoon led her squad through the streets of the capital city. She was a medic by training, but today she was a warrior. Everyone was a warrior today. Contact left. Someone shouted. Vex soldiers appeared from a side street. They were tall and armored and terrifying. They fired their weapons in careful, measured bursts. Just as they had been trained, Yoonji's squad didn't fire in careful, measured bursts. They unleashed everything at once. The Vex soldiers fell in seconds. Move up, Yoonji ordered. Don't give them time to think. This was the human way of war. Speed, violence, overwhelming force. Never let the enemy rest. Never let them plan. Never let them breathe. In the great chamber of the Galactic Council, the representatives watched live feeds from the battle. They saw Vex ships exploding. They saw Vex soldiers retreating. They saw an empire that had ruled for 8,000 years crumbling in ours. High Speaker Vel sat in stunned silence. Counselor Thorn had fled the chamber, unable to watch his people's defeat. This is impossible, someone whispered. The Vex are one of our most powerful members, or Ambassador Rin corrected quietly. They were one of our most powerful members. On the Unity, Admiral Wujin received the latest reports. The Vex flagship had surrendered. Half their fleet was destroyed or disabled. Their ground forces were in full retreat. Sir, his communications officer said, High Commander Drox is requesting a ceasefire. He says he's willing to discuss terms. Wujin looked at the display. He thought about New Busan. He thought about 2.3 million people who would never see their families again. Tell him terms are not negotiable. He can surrender unconditionally, or he can die. Those are his only options. Yes, sir. The battle raged for another 16 hours. And when it was over, the Vex Dominion existed only in history books. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. The war lasted 94 days. In that time, humanity did something the galaxy had not seen in 12,000 years. They fought. They bled. They died. And they won. The surrender ceremony took place on the Bridge of the Unity. High Commander. Drox knelt before Admiral Te Wujin, his scales pale with shame and fear. Behind him stood the surviving leaders of the Vex Dominion, their heads bowed. The Vex Dominion surrenders unconditionally to the United Earth government, Drox said. His voice was hollow. We submit ourselves to your justice. Wujin looked down at the creature who had ordered the massacre of 2.3 million people. He could feel the hatred burning in his chest. He could see the faces of the dead in his mind. He could hear their screams. It would be so easy to destroy them, to wipe the Vex from existence, to make them pay for every life they had taken. But that was not why humanity had come to the stars. Stand up, Wujin said quietly. Drox looked up in confusion. What? I said stand up. The war is over. We have no interest in humiliating you. Slowly, the High Commander rose to his feet. He towered over the human admiral, but he felt small. He felt weak. You will face trial for what you did at New Busan, Wujin continued. You and everyone who gave the orders. There will be justice. But there will not be revenge. We are not here to destroy your people. We are here to make sure no one ever has to die like our colonists died again. Drox stared at him. You could destroy us. You have the power. Yes, we do. And that is exactly why we won't. The news spread across the galaxy like fire. The humans had won. The Vex had fallen. But instead of committing genocide, instead of erasing their enemy from existence, humanity had shown mercy. The Galactic Council could not understand it. High Speaker. Bell requested a meeting with Dr. Una Park. She came to his private chamber, alone and unarmed. She looked different than she had 3 months ago. There were new lines on her face, new shadows in her eyes. But there was also something else, something harder. You could have destroyed them, Vel said. Why didn't you? Una sat down across from him. Because that would make us monsters. And we've had enough monsters in our history. But they killed your people. They killed your brother, yes, they did. Her voice caught for a moment, and I wanted to kill them all. Every day, I wake up and part of me still wants that. But my brother didn't believe in revenge. He believed in building things, in making life better. If I destroy the Vex, I become the same thing they were, and his death means nothing. Vel was silent for a long moment. We have underestimated you, all of us. We saw you as children. As primitives, we never imagined you could defeat one of our most powerful members. You didn't understand us. You saw our violence and thought we were savages. But our violence is not who we are. It's what we're capable of when we have to be. We don't want war. We never want war. But we will fight to protect our own. And we will win. What happens now? Una leaned forward. Now, things change. We want a seat on the Security Council. We want equal rights for all species. And we want a new law that protects colonies from territorial correction. What happened to New Busan can never happen again. To anyone, the Council will resist. And remind them what happened to the Vex. We prefer diplomacy. But we're done being dismissed. Vel nodded slowly. He was 10,000 years old. He had seen empires rise and fall, but he had never seen anything like humanity. I will support your proposals, he said finally. You have earned that much. Thank you, High SP. Eker. One question. Why did you come to the stars? With your history, with all your conflicts, why did you reach out to us? Una smiled. It was a tired smile, but there was hope in it. Because we wanted to be better. We looked at our history, and we were ashamed. We thought maybe if we found others among the stars, we could learn from them. We could become the species we always wanted to be. Instead, you found us. Weak, arrogant, cruel. You're not all those things. You're just old. You've forgotten what it means to fight for something. We can remind you. We can protect you. But you have to let us be your partners, not your pets. A partnership of equals. Exactly. The council voted 3 days later. Humanity was granted full membership and a permanent seat on the Security Council. The new laws passed without opposition. No one wanted to be the next Vex Dominion, A new phrase entered the galactic language. It was spoken in whispers, in warnings, in stories told to children. Do not wake the humans. 6 months after the war ended, Admiral Te Wujin stood on New Bushan. The planet was being rebuilt. New cities were rising from the ashes. New colonists were arriving every day. Life was returning to a world that had known only death. But today, Wujan was not here for the living. He was here for the dead. The memorial stood in the center of what had once been New Busan City. It was a wall of black stone, stretching 4 kilometers in every direction. Carved into its surface were names. 2.3 million names. Every person who had died in the massacre. Wujin walked along the wall until he found what he was looking for. A small section near the middle. The names of Dr. Junho Park and his research team. He placed a white flower at the base of the wall. We remember, he whispered. We always remember. Behind him, the sun was setting over the rebuilt city. Children were playing in the streets. Families were sitting down to dinner. People were laughing and loving and living. In defiance of everyone who had tried to destroy them, this was what humanity fought for. Not conquest. Not power. Not revenge. Life. Simple, precious, beautiful life. The galaxy had learned to fear humanity, but in time, they would learn something else. They would learn that the same species that could wage terrible war could also show incredible kindness. The same hands that pulled triggers could also plant gardens. The same hearts that burned with rage could also overflow with love. Humanity was not perfect. They never would be. But they were trying. Every day, in 1,000 small ways, they were trying to be better than they were yesterday. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that was all anyone could ask. Admiral Wujan looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, a galaxy was watching, waiting to see what humanity would do next. He smiled. We're just getting started, he said to no one in particular. Wait until you see what we do next. The memorial wall stood silent behind him, holding the names of the dead. But the future stretched out before him, full of possibility and hope. The age of humanity had truly begun.